Hey guys, I'm gonna talk about Romans 2:28. This has come up in my comment section from preterists, and it's come up in other people's videos and preterists. And supposedly, this verse 2:28 is supposed to prove that Jews are no longer Jews, basically. And if you want to be a spiritual Jew, this is how it's accomplished, apparently. And the first thing I would point out is that if there's no such thing as a spiritual, if there's no such thing as an actual Jew, as far as the covenantal promises. What advantage is there to being a spiritual Jew? I don't understand. If they've been abolished, why would you want to be a spiritual version? But I'm going to point you out to verse 10. It talks about glory and honor and peace to everyone, the Jew first, and also the Greek. Okay, this is Paul talking. Now we're going to start at verse 17, just to lay this silly argument to rest. But if you call yourself a Jew, okay, so we know who he's talking to, Jews, and rely, and what is a Jew? Descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and rely on the law and boast in God, and know his will and approve what is excellent, because you are instructed from the law. And if you are sure that you yourself are a guide to the blind, a light to those who are in darkness, and instructor of the foolish, a teacher of children, having in the law the embodiment and knowledge of the truth, you then who teach others, do you not teach yourself? While you preach, you, the Jew, against stealing, do you steal? You who say one must not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who, the Jews, who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who boast in the law, dishonor God by breaking the law. You who boast, who? The Jew. For as it is written, the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. For circumcision is of value if you obey the law. But if you break the law, your circumcision becomes uncircumcision. Who's circumcised? The Jew. So if a man who is uncircumcised keeps the precepts of the law, will not his uncircumcision be regarded as circumcision? So if a man, that's some other category, then he who is physically uncircumcised but keeps the law will condemn you who have it written in code and circumcision but break the law. So he's talking about this Jew to a Jew the entire time. He says, for no one is a Jew who is merely one outwardly. Okay, we're still talking about Jews. Nor is circumcision outward and physical. Okay, nothing about Gentiles here or the end of Jews. But a Jew is one inwardly. And we already know what a Jew is. He's a physical descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Um, And circumcision is a matter of the heart, by the Spirit, not by the letter. His praise is not from man, but from God. He's just telling you what a true Jew is here. There's nothing about getting rid of a Jew or dissolving Judaism or anything else. And Paul, I can't find anywhere where Paul preached against the law to Gentiles. I mean, to Jews. He taught that it was not the basis for salvation. That was the partition that had been broke down. But I can't find anywhere where he told them not to circumcise their children like he tells the Gentiles. He tells the Gentiles not to circumcise their children. But he doesn't say this to Jews, apparently. And we actually have a situation here that seems to prove my point. Now, remember what Peter said about Paul's words being tricky, okay? So, Acts 21:17. When we had come to Jerusalem, the brothers received us gladly. On the following day, Paul went in with us to James, and all the elders were present. After greeting them, he related one by one the things that God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. And when they heard it, they glorified God, and they said to him, you see, brother, how many thousands are among the Jews of those who had believed. They are zealous for the law, for the Torah. And they have been told that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children or walk according to our customs. What then is to be done? They will certainly hear that you have come. Do therefore what we tell you. We have 4 men who are under a vow. Take these men and purify. So he goes through the Nazarite oath. But we see James here saying that people have been hearing that you've been saying to forsake Moses and not circumcise the children. Okay? And then he talks about the letter that's going forth to the Gentiles, and that's abstain from food that's been sacrificed to idols, from blood, and from what's been strangled, and sexual immorality. And this is a weird little exchange when you stop to think about it. You got James, who's all for circumcision apparently, and he was called James the Just. That was another way of saying James the Hasidic. That's he was it Yakub the Hasidic, I think they would have called him. Even Tovia Singer talks about this name that he has, and that name in the Jewish tradition meant one thing: is that he was zealous for the law. And look in the positive light he talks about him. And when they heard it, they glorified God and said to him, "You see, brother, how many thousands are among the Jews of those who have believed? They are zealous for the law." And see, they've been taught, and they're zealous for the law, and they believe in Christ apparently, but they're zealous for the law. And it says, you teaching the Jews who are among the Jews in diaspora, among the Gentiles, not to circumcise the children and walk in their customs. So we have this weird little exchange going on here. But James is concerned about this. And if we, sure enough, you look at some commentaries on this, and I looked at a couple of them, because it's a weird exchange, and it seems to me they're dancing around this issue. But this one says, "Thou teachest to forsake Moses, etc. From anything that appears in the course of this book to the contrary, this information was incorrect. We do not find Paul preaching thus to the Jews. It is true that in his epistles, some of which had been written before this time, he showed that circumcision and uncircumcision were equally unavailable for salvation of the soul, and that by their deeds of the law no man could be justified, but he had not yet said to any Jew, forsake Moses, and do not circumcise your children. He told them that Christ had delivered them from the yoke of the law, but that he said as the liberty, they were at liberty to wear that yoke if they wished." Okay. And we come to another one. Let's see. It says, "For Paul made no difference regarding circumcision made no difference regarding one's status before God." Galatians 5:6. However, so far as we know, Paul never told Jewish converts not to circumcise their children, nor was he opposed to the practice by Jewish believers. We have already been told in Acts that Paul did not teach against the Jewish Torah in of itself. He circumcised Timothy for the sake of expediency. He observed some of the Jewish pilgrim festivals, etc., etc., took the Nazarite vow. Okay, that's interesting. And then this take on it says, Paul, like Jesus, was a Jew and never claimed to start a new religion. Followers of Jesus thus automatically were considered Jews because they were followers of Jesus the Jew. The problem was that Gentiles were also attracted to both Judaism and to the Jesus movement within Judaism. Before Paul, Gentiles, non-Jews, sometimes converted to Judaism, but sometimes they were only God-fearers who attended synagogue but were not converts. That is, they did not get circumcised and did not keep the whole Torah. Paul's major teaching was that God-fearers could be true Jews through faith in Jesus. Okay? Now, we take all that information we've learned, and now that we've totally demolished their interpretation of Romans 2:28, you read it in context, it's only speaking to Jews. It's not speaking of anyone else, but it does mention Gentiles in chapter 2, and they're not included in the speech, and there's no talk of Jews being dissolved or anything else. And there's something important to remember here. This was pointed out to me today, and I really started thinking about this, and I really couldn't think of anywhere. And I can't think of anywhere where God made a covenant with the Gentiles. And when you put all this together, I think it's pretty clear Israel has to exist. And the Israel of God, well, I've seen people debate these terms. At the end of the day, the bloodline of Jacob that believes in Christ, okay, and they're held more responsible. Even Paul says this, they have a greater responsibility because they're the older brother. That is Israel. And I've seen a video was posted today about physical Israel, and it was full of a bunch of just stuff I don't believe. So I don't know what this person's talking about. It was very ad hominem, but spiritual Israel, this term that people keep using, is just a bad term to use for the true descendants of Jacob, the people that are in the covenant. Our salvation is the product of the covenant with Israel. There was no covenant made with us. Think about that. Now, some people might take this other point of view and say, well, when you come to Jesus, you become a Jew. I don't think I'm buying that one. And like I said, these commentaries, the Erdman's commentary, the ones on Bible Hub and all, they all seem to dance around this issue. It seems very disingenuous. They're not facing up to the fact, in my opinion, of the way James saw it and the way Paul saw it. And you find this later with Peter when he has his run-in with Paul. They had slightly different bends on this, but it would appear there is no covenant with Gentiles. Our salvation in the Old Testament, when you look at it, and the mere fact, like you said, the God-fearer thing, that is true. There were people who were not proselytes. They were just God-fearers, and they did go to synagogue, but they couldn't participate in certain things. But our salvation is the product of the fulfillment of the covenants. And that's another thing we got to watch out for, this new covenant theology. That's not really what's going on. If anything, it would be a renewed covenant or a completed covenant. Because these things are pointed out. Even in the book of Ezekiel, it points out that this David is going to come and rule in a temple. And the Gentiles around them will, just like it says in Isaiah 56, is it? And Jeremiah 31. So you touch on all this stuff and you put it all together. It's devastatingly clear. Number one, they're taking Romans 2:28 completely out of context. This was a discussion aimed solely at Jews. Number two, we see James was a proponent of circumcision. That's what you see. And I think Peter was too. Three, the things that Paul was saying to the Gentiles about not getting circumcised, yeah, that was to the Gentiles. That was aimed straight at the Gentiles. They have no reason to get circumcised because you're not going to be a true member of Jacob. And that was for them. That wasn't for us. And the fulfillment of that promise, like I said, I don't know where all these people are putting out these false understandings of physical Israel today. Physical Israel is real. Yes, it will be there. It has to be there, in my opinion, because the ingathering is naturally, that's what's going to lead them. But the Bible is clear. Not all people in Israel are true Jews, even as Paul says at 2:28. If they don't have a true love for God, and you know, there's a difference. Don't ever mash those two together. Okay, there's what I call the Zionist Jew, who's they're supremacists. They're Jewish supremacists, and I don't think they're the real deal. Yeah, and there are some ugly scenarios that go on over there. They're killing each other constantly, but there are Jews under that surface that do believe in national Israel, because of the biblical promises, but they're not a domination oriented, if you know what I mean. And those to me would probably be who the real Jewish people are. And all that means, when we boil all those terms down, it's basically going to be the saved and the unsaved Jew. That's basically what it's going to boil down to. So there's a fake Jew, and no, there's the good Jew and the bad Jew. Just like a good Gentile and a bad Gentile. Okay? But yeah, there's not any place I can think of where a covenant was made with the Gentiles. And and you look at the branches too, that's another point to point out in Ezekiel. The two sticks that are put together, that's all Jewish people. All of them. That's the 12 tribes. That's the north and the south. Put that stick back together. There's no Gentile in that stick, in that prophetic stick. It's only Jews. But like I said, our salvation is the product of God keeping his promise to them. It's not that they are doing such great things. It's that God made a promise to them. And there's going to come a time, like I said, where he won't have his name blasphemed anymore. But that was the point of this video. Read Romans 2:17 down to 2:29. And you're going to see this whole discussion. It's not saying there's no such thing as a Jew, or someone who's a Jew inwardly is a Jew. That's not what he's saying. He's saying if you are a Jew and you're not circumcised in your heart, then you're not a true Jew. Okay? This is all talking about Jewish people. This has nothing to do with Gentiles who are mentioned earlier on in verse 14. And notice that when the Gentiles who do not have the law by nature, but do what the law requires, so they're not actually following the law, they are law unto themselves, even though they don't have the law. He says they are a law unto themselves. He didn't say they're Torah. He didn't say that. He says something completely different. But read 17 to 29, and you're going to see that this claim that verse 28 somehow nullifies flesh Jews and makes a place for spiritual Jews is just totally incorrect. This is an in-house discussion aimed at Jewish people. There's no Gentiles from 17 to 29 being spoken of as becoming a Jew or something like that. What he's talking about is phony Jews. You got the blood, but you don't have the heart. You talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk. As far as being a true Jew, it has nothing to do with Goy, outsiders, foreigners, and Gentiles. Those are addressed earlier and later in the book of Romans. So that's it on this one. Keep it kind of short. God bless.